I encourage my students to get into the habit of a certain routine every week, from checking a lesson plan that went live on Monday, to taking the quiz on Friday, to doing their first discussion comments on Friday and their assignment on Monday. I myself tried to get into the same routine of responding, checking in to see if there were any problems, and being kind of on standby to make sure that everything technologically was going as planned. But it also helped me stay on top of grading and responding and staying engaged with the class. I would also add that the identity verification piece of the puzzle is really important for an online class, and the way that I approached that for my class was that we did a field trip together to Whole Foods Market, where my day job is. And so we were able to not only confirm everybody's identity, but we were able to take a field trip throughout the store, see some of those current trends of food and beverage in action, and sample some items. So we were able to really bring some of the things that we had been talking about in an online class to life in person.
I think having discussions weekly where the students are required to come into a forum, an online discussion board, you pose a question and they answer it, and require the students to come back and read everyone's response and respond back to that. I think that is extremely important, and for an instructor to be in the class is also important. I do see where sometimes people facilitate online discussions, but only the students are talking. And I think they really want to hear from a professor. So I like to interject, and I will go into a student's comments and I'll input my comments. And I try to do it several times a week, not just right before the deadline. But I think students, when they see my comment like, hey, thanks for sharing your opinion, glad you made it to this week's discussion, I think it does go a long way. In addition, send videos of yourself. Now that is the strangest thing that I've had to do teaching online, is sitting in front of my computer, talking to my screen and trying to edit a video of myself and rewatching and editing. It is painful. But I think in the end, the students really appreciate hearing from you and seeing you, because for most of the interaction online, it's through written words. And so adding a personality is huge. And what I've learned from our experts here on our campus is we don't always have to use our face, but there are avatar creators where we can use, and I think the students appreciate it. Last week I was a koala bear with an Australian accent, and I think I got some virtual laughs out of that.
In making that connection with the students, I really like to do projects that kind of build the community. So things that are fun, things that the student actually gets to explain things about themselves, gets to show things in pictures or videos about themselves, and then I in turn get to do things for them too, and then that way we get to know each other.
Similar to face-to-face, I work really hard in building a classroom community when I'm teaching online. So I spend a lot of time the first few weeks of the class ensuring that students feel like they're part of the classroom community. And that requires me checking in with students, maybe checking in with students who are not as active in the class. The other practice I would recommend to others thinking of teaching online is, like many of you, I love teaching. I love my job, and I'm excited about sharing the subject matter that I have to inspire students to learn. And I think just bring that same excitement into the online classroom, and you'll get students excited about your topic, and really teaching online becomes like teaching face-to-face.
I do encourage instructors to be very patient with themselves and other students, that there is a learning curve for everyone, and to know that, you may be making mistakes, students may be making mistakes in understanding it, to be very patient with everyone and to try to communicate that to students. I've had both from the instructor perspective and also from the student perspective that, both are trying to call each other out on, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, and again, sometimes it could be tech problems and issues of trying to understand the tools that we're using. So I think patience is a very important virtue to have.
First, for my online classes, I have a prep site that I created. I have my own websites, but you could easily do this through something like Weebly. It is a site that has a short description of how the online course will run. It has sample videos and PDFs and syllabi for the students to open. It lists the right browser to use. It talks about the workload. In one of my classes, I have an online leaderboard, so I have a video that explains why I use a leaderboard and how they can use it in their course. So this URL is placed in Banner. It's sent out to the students about 3 months in advance, then about 3 weeks in advance, and then about the week before. It also includes a Google form that's embedded in the site with 6 simple questions so that I can judge whether they've understood when the class week starts and stops, what the obligations are, how many times they should come to the website, etc. So the second practice that I would recommend is video feedback on assignments. It's important to keep a personality going, a relationship going between the instructor and the student. And one of the ways I've done that in recent semesters is to take their papers that they do, bring them into my iPad through a program called Explain Everything. And then I walk through their papers, marking them up online, and I do a narration. It's between 2 and 5 minutes per memo to explain to them how they earned the points that they earned. The students really like this. I polled them after the first semester and they were 100% in favor of this and said I should do it again. And I'm like, gee, thanks, it's a lot more work. But it's worth it because I did it last semester as well, and the students said things like, I felt like you were sitting right down next to me in class and we were going over things in a personal tutorial. They felt that it was warmer than just getting back a marked up paper with word comments on the side. Another practice that I would recommend kind of goes counter to things that most people think of as a good practice, and that is the practice of leaving students alone while they do their discussion board. What I do is I have a discussion question that's usually involves some kind of analytical thinking, and I have the students talk among themselves just the way they would in a face-to-face classroom, where I read the discussion board every day, but I don't comment on it at all, just as I would walk around the classroom and listen to small group conversations, but I wouldn't necessarily butt in, because I've discovered when I make comments on a student discussion board or in a face-to-face group, independent thinking stops. And students start saying, well, she must want to hear more like what Jessie said. So if I say Jessie made a good point, everybody stops thinking about anything other than trying to rephrase what Jessie said. So I keep an eye on the discussion board, and then at the end of the week, I pick 4 to 6 students' comments. They could be comments, they could be great questions, they could be additional research, and I write an email that goes out to all of the students that mentions my take on the specific issue, and then give kudos to these 4 to 6 students by name. Like, John did a great job in doing additional research on whether a patent belongs to an employer or an employee, for example.